All right. Thank you, everyone. It is an honor, a privilege to welcome you to Kansas City. I'm Bryson Ripley, the Kansas City chapter president, although I should say we're going to be transitioning to a steering committee, so very exciting. Uh, Thank you to Dr. Daniel Wildcat, who will be speaking next, author of Red Alert, Saving the Planet with Indigenous Knowledge and On Indigenuity, Learning the Lessons of Mother Earth, as well as the director of Indigenous and American Indian Studies at Haskell Indian Nations University. Thank you to Ann Solntrop and Kimi Igla, who I know both through the Peaceworks KC, local organization here. They've both been leading voices in the anti-nuclear fight here in Kansas City, and I'm honored to call them allies. Thank you to Dr. Jared Ball, professor of communications and Africana studies at Morgan State University, author of The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, and host of podcast I Mix What I Like. Dr. Ball prepared an amazing talk for today, but unfortunately will not be able to attend. And of course, thank you to Monir Sher, director and filmmaker. He'll be showing his very personal documentary, Gaza is Our Home, tonight. And I would encourage all the chapters to consider showing it in their local community as well. And of course, thank you to the convention committee for all the planning you've done and the opportunity you provided to learn. Thank you to National and of course my chapter who supported myself through this and volunteered and done so many things. So thank you. Thank you, Kansas City. And lastly, for the thank yous, thank you to Dave Logston for pushing our chapter to consider this opportunity. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I just want to take a moment to say I appreciate others being committed to developing younger leadership. And as I recognize this, I feel a sense of responsibility to seize that opportunity being gifted to me by providing action. Our theme, if you don't know, is from chaos to community, peace through nonviolent action. Violent action, the opposite end of the spectrum. The forces that be, there are many ways that they are violent, but I would argue there are many more ways to be nonviolent. Education, community support, building community, healthcare, truth-telling, love, empathy, public transportation. Big fan of public transportation. So we're here to prepare for action. I was quite inspired by the poem last night, Holes by W.D. Earhart. I'm confident that we really are still digging holes, but now we're just digging humanity's well of empathy deeper with every action we take. Remember, going into the rest of the convention, it's time to learn, grow, and find strength in the community you see around you. Thank you for your time, and now please welcome Dr. Daniel Wildcat.
Sunlay Kuyasate. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Bryson. Let me introduce myself in my Zoyaha language. What I would say to all of you is Agelasan, Sangeli, Zoyaha Yuchiha Muskogi, Shidane, Adene. What I said in my Yuchi language was, good morning, how are you? I am Zoyaha, child of the sun of the Creek Nation. And my name is Wildcat. Boshita Adene. I'm honored to be here among my heroes. You're all my heroes. Veterans who stand for peace. It doesn't get any better than that in my book. No one has a better moral standing, a spiritual standing to speak for peace than veterans. I too am a veteran. Vietnam War era. I was not Vietnam, fortunately. I was drafted in the U.S. Army in June of 1972, completed my basic training. And those of you in the Army will know where this is, Fort Lost in the Woods, right? Southern Missouri, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And I was fortunate because out of my basic training company, about half got the MOS advanced infantry. And they knew right where they were going after their advanced infantry training. But the war was clearly starting to wind down. I did not get that MOS. I ended up eventually, after long story, by the book when it's written, my autobiography, but I ended up with the MOS 93 Echo 20. Does anyone in here know what 93 Echo 20 is? If you do, I'll be surprised. 93 Echo 20 was a meteorological observer. I ended up spending my time in the Army at White Sands Missile Range, working in the weather station. So I was very fortunate, worked with all civilians, all the forecasters were civilians and everything. But I came, like many of us in my generation, all of my uncles, my mother's and my father's side, combat veterans, most World War II. My dad was a Marine. His two brothers were in the Army. My dad Nathaniel was a Marine. My Uncle Jimmy, my Uncle Andrew were in the Army. My cousins, I had a number of cousins. Two of them were combat veterans in Vietnam. So I was part of that generation. I saw, our dads were, quote, the greatest generation. And I saw, a lot of what, a lot of people talk about post-traumatic stress as if that's a new thing. Read your history. Warriors have had post-traumatic stress ever since we started wars. And, I saw it in my uncles. And, cigarette smoking, beer and whiskey. I mean, that's how they self-medicated. You think about that, all of those World War II veterans who died too young because of drinking and smoking. But that's, I was just joking with someone. So basic training, Fort Lost in the Woods, Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, June 1972. I don't know when they stopped this, but the C rations still had the little packs of cigarettes in there. They still had it. I mean, with a C ration, you would get the little pack of cigarettes. And what did the drill sergeant say? Well, every time, we took a break, smoke them if you got them, right? Well, that's changed, thank goodness. But I'm really honored to be here. What Bryson asked me to do is if I would offer a land acknowledgement. I have mixed feelings about land acknowledgements. I'll say why, but I am going to offer one today. And land acknowledgements, I think, have unfortunately become often for institutions like UMKC, Kansas University, University of Missouri, all these public institutions that want a land acknowledgement. And it becomes largely performative. They get up and they read this little things. Oh, we want to honor, the indigenous people who, this was their land and blah, blah, blah. And I think in many respects, they've missed the point. Very few of those land acknowledgements say anything about the land. In my traditions, that's where the acknowledgement resides in the land itself. If there's one generalization I would offer about indigenous people, Bryson's, introduction mentioned I teach at Haskell Indian Nations University. It's the de facto United Nations of indigenous higher education in the United States. We are the only university in the United States that is chartered by the U.S. government to exclusively serve members of federally recognized nations. Indigenous First Nations in the United States. So I've got students from Alaska. I've got students from the Everglades in Florida, Rancheria, Southern California, Wabanaki Confederacy members from Maine, and everywhere in between. I've been there a long time. I couldn't imagine being a professor any place else in the world because my students are all indigenous. And so I'll make a couple of generalizations. And one is, if you're going to do a land acknowledgement, begin with the land. So what I want to do today is begin with the land by saying, Gahatane, Weoshile, Creator, breath of life. Aga Agamfe. Aga Sanlea. Today is a beautiful day. And we thank this very earth we stand on, the soil. We thank the land, the water. The water. Where does our water come from in Kansas City? Missouri River, yes. Most of it, the Missouri River. A lot of it, about 20% of it, 25% of it comes out of really extracted from the alluvial soils that are underneath Kansas City from this water provided by the Kansas River and the Missouri River. We've got very rich soil here. We have the gift of water. And we have the wind, the air. Among my people, and I know there are other people of indigenous heritage here, but you may have in your nations, and a lot of the nations that came from the southeastern United States had wind clans. And the wind clan is a very important clan among the Muskogee people because the wind's always telling you what's coming. The wind carries the messages. And so to be a wind clan member among the Muskogee is very, very important. So we thank the land, we thank the wind, we thank the air we breathe. Where would we be, without the land, the air, and the water? We wouldn't be. That's the bottom line, right? We wouldn't be. So a land acknowledgement should always begin with a humble acknowledgement of the gift of life that Creator, in my language, Kahatne, breath of life, offered with that gift of the land, the air, and the water. It's the one existential fact, ladies and gentlemen, we have to accept because none of you had to fill out a credit application before you were born to take that first breath of life. Creator made you credit worthy day one. So land acknowledgement, let's thank the land. Let's think of this soil. Let's think and talk a little more about that in a minute. And then we think about the first peoples of this place. As I mentioned, we're probably, as the crow flies, no more than 5 miles from the confluence of the Kansas, the Kaw, and the Missouri River. And this was an incredible trading site for thousands of years before European settlers arrived. It was right on the edge of the Great Plains. It was right on the edge of these Ozark Eastern woodlands. A great place for trade. and it was known as a trade place. Many peoples came here, but the folks who had the most enduring presence, the Osage, the Oto-Missouri, the Kaw or Kanza, we thank them. We thank those earth keepers for being good stewards of this place. So I'd like to suggest to you when you go home, if you've got a school or a college or university, reach out to them and ask if you can see their land acknowledgement and see if they are indeed acknowledging the gift of life the land gives us. Too many of them just start naming the tribes that live there. That's that anthropocentric view. See, we think it's all about humans. Well, in my Zoyaha traditions, and I know in many other tribal traditions, that would be the height of arrogance. We know it's not all about us. In fact, maybe that's the fatal misstep. Some people do think it's all about humans with no respect to the land, the air, the water, the plants, and animals. So I, a simple Zoyaha, child of the sun, honor this land, the air, the water, plants, the animals, and the first earth keepers of this place, the Osage, the Oto-Missouri, the Kaw. That's a wildcat version of a land acknowledgement. It begins with the land. Don't forget that. Now, Bryson said I could have a few minutes to make some comments. So I'd like to build on what I just said and challenge you all to leave here as you are those warriors for peace, those brave people standing for peace. I'd like to share with you a Zoyaha, but it's not just a Zoyaha. You don't make generalizations about indigenous people because we're so diverse. But yet, as I mentioned, if you're around enough, you realize there are certain kinds of things we can, even though we come from different places, we accept. I just got the honor to be invited to go to Western Australia. I just got back 2 weeks ago. So I was with our Aboriginal brothers and sisters in Western Australia. The Yudjuk Noongar people of Perth, Australia, that's their homeland. And then the Magana people of Shark Bay on the west coast of Australia. And as we started talking, it was amazing how well we understood each other. What they talk about is being in country, on the land. When they say we're in country, they mean they're on their land, their homelands. And we got to talking about what is entailed with that kind of sense of connection to place. And I'm going to give you 3 points to think about. And then maybe if we have a couple minutes and anyone wants to ask questions, I would welcome that. Let's see how quickly I can get through this. 3 quick points, though. I'm going to give you a snapshot. It's an impressionistic picture. It's not going to have a lot of details, but I'm going to make some generalizations. Remember, they're just generalizations. That means that I'm not claiming every indigenous people on the planet hold this, but I will say a lot of tribal people in North America and the United States certainly think this way, because I've been around them now for 4 decades teaching at Haskell Indian Nations University. And my dear friend, the late Vine Deloria Jr., if any of you recognize that name. How many of you recognize the name Vine Deloria Jr.? Yes, I knew that would be the case in this group. Yeah, you can't imagine how many public presentations I give, and no one knows who Vine Deloria Jr. was. One of our great 20th century intellectuals, a Lakota man enrolled at Standing Rock uh, by his father, Vine Deloria Sr., but grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And he always was adamant about it all begins with the land, our relationship to the land. So the first point I'm going to ask you to think about as a kind of a way of different thinking, an indigenous lens. Put on an indigenous lens. Point one. And this is where modern science has caught up with our indigenous wisdom. I don't know if any of you have had grandkids or kids, or there's a few of you look like you might be young enough to have taken a biology course. Biology's changed because when you take biology now, it's all about DNA and genetics. And what is DNA and that recombinant kind of process of DNA, recombinant processes of DNA through biological life? What does it teach us? Guess what? All life on the planet is related. So why do humans keep talking about natural resources? They're not natural resources. I love the first time I went north to a meeting after I started teaching at Haskell. They had an elder. I think he was, I can't remember Dakota or Lakota, but he gave an invocation in his language. And he had a phrase. The first time I heard it was, and I apologize to any Lakota, Nakota, or Dakota speakers. I can't get rid of my Oklahoma twang, but it kind of sounds like this: Matakiwe Oyase. I heard every time I go north, I heard these elders use that term. And I asked one of my Lakota students from Pine Ridge, I said, what is Matakiwe Oyase? I was in my office at Haskell. This dates this question when you hear what he did. He said, how long are you going to be in your office? I said, well, till 4:30 or 5. He said, stay right here. I've got to go to my dorm room and get something. He came back. Now, that's why I said this dates you how old this story is. He brought back a button. It's about that big. And the button was that first image of Earth taken by a satellite from outer space. They call it the green marble sometimes. The blue-green image of the Earth from outer space. And written across it in Lakota was Mitakiwe Oyase. He said, that's what they're saying. He said, we pray for all our relations. The plants, the animals, the earth, the air, the water. Now, modern science has finally realized that all life on this planet is related. So, first point, try this on for a worldview. When you leave here today, try to quit thinking about natural resources and honor the fact that you live in a world full of natural relatives. If you're in my family and you treat your aunties and uncles like resources, you're not going to be welcome very long. If the only time you show up is with your hand out and that red dirt road to their house is long enough and they see you coming, they're going to close the curtains and turn all the lights off and lock the door because they don't want to be treated like an ATM machine. How have humans treated the earth? It's an ATM machine. Now, scientists, not scientists, a lot of engineers are talking about, we've got one more frontier we've got to conquer on this planet. They're considering mining the ocean floors. Yeah, Right. Oh boy is right. Talk about mindless, careless behavior. So, point one, disabuse yourself of this natural resources thinking and embrace natural relative thinking. It's a kinship view of the world. We are all related, whether we like it or not. Second point, following that, think of how many dollars we spend and how many lawyers we pay going to court to determine who has the right to use what resource. A lot of money, a lot of time. See, if you take that first principle, that we don't live in a world of resources, we live in a world full of relatives, we can walk away from, I think, is an absolute fixation with defining politics and ethics exclusively in terms of rights. Now, I don't want to be misquoted on this. Indigenous people respect liberties and rights of individuals as much as anyone I've met on the planet. But that's just half of the calculation of being a good human being. Because you don't ask yourself who has the right to use granny, who has the right to use auntie and uncle. What you ask yourself is, what are my responsibilities to my kin? I would love to see someone running for political office in the United States get up and talk about inalienable rights, but make sure those are coupled with unalienable responsibilities we have. That's indigenous thinking. That's indigenous thinking. That's tribal thinking. Nothing primitive about it. It's pretty sophisticated. And then if you take those first 2 points, remember they're pretty simple. We're going to reject this natural resources thinking and adopt a natural relative view, a kinship view of our place in the world. We're going to counterbalance inalienable rights, which some people seem absolutely. We just went through a pandemic, and I lived in a state where a lot of people said, I'm not going to wear a mask because you're violating my inalienable right. And I asked them, do you have any unalienable responsibilities? See, they couldn't make that connection. That was foreign to their way of thinking. If you live among relatives, you have to think about responsibilities. Disabuse ourselves of natural resources, embrace kinship and natural relatives. Second, let's counterbalance inalienable rights with unalienable responsibilities. And I will guarantee you, that if I don't know that I'll live to see it, I'm getting kind of long in the tooth, but I have a strong feeling within the next decade, we will have indigenous candidates for public office, and I will not be surprised if they talk about our unalienable responsibilities humankind has to the balance of creation. Now, what's that? There you go. That's what we want. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, it might be, mightn't it? Yeah. Okay, and that's a whole nother lecture, but remember, the founding fathers probably wouldn't have had an idea of democracy if they hadn't set in on some of the council longhouse meetings among the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquoian Confederacy. That's where they got their ideas. But it's interesting, isn't it? The part that they left out of democracy. We tell the story of founding fathers, Among the Six Nations, it's, well, there you go. Among the Haudenosaunee, men don't vote. Only the women have the power to elect the leaders. The founding fathers left that out. Okay. So you've got my first 2 points. What's my third point? And then if we've got time, Bryson, I don't want to use up a lot of time. We'll see, but maybe a few questions if anyone has it. Here would be my third point. You take those first two, and I think what we need to seriously consider is redefining progress. So progress isn't just this anthropocentric idea. I mean, we know what progress is. Is it making my life more comfortable? Oh, my human life. Is it making my life more convenient? Oh, my human life. And is it putting money, capital gains, in my pocket? That's progress. That's the dominant system of progress. I think we need another definition. We need an indigenous definition. And the indigenous definition of process as at the end of the day, have we, in the choices we made and the activities we have been engaged in, our conduct and our behavior, promoted systems of life enhancement on this beautiful blue-green planet, this Mother Earth? It's not all about us. That's the anthropocentric worldview that has given us the age of the Anthropocene. So 3 points, and I'd ask you to take those with you. If you think that's BS, I've only taken about 12 minutes of your time. So, and if you really think it's BS and you want to get even with someone, just buy my book on indigenuity and give it to someone you really hate. That way we both end. We both win, right? We both win. Yeah. So anyway, thank you for being such an attentive audience. And I'm so honored to be here with my heroes, Sonlay Koyasata. Thank you so much. And I see Bryson's got a microphone. Okay. Hey, Bryson, right there. Check.
George Taylor, Spokane, Chapter 35. Our city is surrounded by fire. My question to you is, could you reflect on the role of fire
Yes.
in the indigenous nations and before then, and as the Europeans view it?
Yes.
The contrast.
I will give you the contrast. I'm very fortunate. One of my former students, now Dr. Amanda Adams at Kansas University, is a fire ecologist. She is of Pima heritage, and she has studied the fact that many of our tribes, from the East Coast to the West Coast that lived in forests, used fire, controlled burns, to reduce what foresters would call the fuel that lies on the ocean, on the forest floor, that makes these horrible crown, huge, out of control fires. We honored fire. We understood the gift of fire. We respected it. And there are ways, if you start doing these, well, in our traditions, we would call them cultural burns because they have a lot more significance to us than just controlling an environment. But nevertheless, the point is we have long traditions of indigenous people using fire so that we don't have these large, incredible, out of control crown fires like we've seen in Northern California. Now, unfortunately, Washington, we've seen some in Oregon, throughout the Intermountain West. If you think of the last decade, I made a comment and a few people got it, but I said, we've already burned up Paradise, California, burnt to the ground. And it just reminds us. I think there's tremendous wisdom Native people hold. It's not going back to live like our ancestors. That's why my latest book I called Indigenuity is let's use some of that ancient wisdom to help us address modern problems. And I think that's something that's an opportunity that we should take advantage of. So thank you for that question. Appreciate it.
Oh, hi, my name is Tom from St. Louis, Chapter 61. I want to thank you for the presentation. And I just want to note how appropriate this backdrop is because we've known since at least 1905 that everything is relative. Western science, it's not just science, it's economic. It's more the economics and scientists just going along and not understanding that everything is about relations. Everything around us is about our relations. And if we treat things as resources, we're going to burn the world up just like this map shows, just like the fires in Oregon. And if we get back to our relations to Earth if we treat economics more than just exchange relations and about gifting and sharing and helping each other as much as having fear of getting something in return. And I just want to add that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sunlight Curiosity, thank you very much. I see over here a couple questions.
Thank you. I'm Ellen Barfield from Chapter 105 on stolen Piscataway land, now referred to as Baltimore, Maryland. Another long-standing passage place and commercial place among many Indigenous people. Yes. Thank you so very much. I have your book, Red Alert. I've known about you for a long time, and it's such an honor to have you here. And our next speakers will be talking about one of the most awful things humans have done. So be patient. That's what the image is about. And I'll be introducing them in a minute. But I was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas, so I've lived in this part of the world for a while.
Okay.
You may have seen me say call when you were about to say it. I've always been able to pay some attention to the other people who are where I've found myself. I'm from Muskogee land in Macon, Georgia, the Ocmulgee River.
Yeah.
What do you know about some land back in Oklahoma to some of the people who were driven there on the Trail of Tears? It sounds good, but I'm not sure it's as good as it sounds. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't know that particular case that you're talking about. There are land back issues all over the United States now, and I think the key thing. So again, I'm just one person. I will give you my take on what a good, healthy, righteous land back consists of. First of all, we're caught up in a colonial world where we never thought in our own traditions anyone could ever own the earth. We never thought of ourselves as owning the land. We had a relationship. We had a kinship with that place that was our home. I think a lot of people are getting caught up with land back, about land titles, who gets the title back, who's going to have control of it. That's not what land back, I think, ought to be about. Land back is, are you returning land so that we can establish right relations again with a place? Can we enhance the ecology, the water quality, the soil quality? Let indigenous earth keepers lead that effort. Now, does that mean that, every elected tribal leader thinks that way? I'm not naive enough to think that's the case. Okay. But I do think we have an opportunity now to really think deeply about land back. My little university, Haskell Indian Nations University, I know many of you are on tight schedules. We're just down the road, 50 minutes literally on K10. You get off 435, go on K10 or go on 70 and then drive through Lawrence to the south side. That's where our campus is. But we just had a retired emeritus professor at KU reach out and say, I've got 80 acres of pretty unspoiled land here in Douglas County, and I'm going to give it to your university because I think you guys will take care of that land, and I know that it can be used in a good way. That's what land back should be about. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yes. And then we had one more hand back here, right there somewhere. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Sydney. I'm from New York, and I just had a question because I'm 23, and things have been looking bleak for a long time, but I feel like they look especially bleak right now. And because you're working with so many university students, what would be your advice to young people right now about just the world, I guess?
I thank you so much for that question. And I missed poetry night last night. I hear it was awesome. Yeah. Okay, good. I'll watch it. Okay. But you gave me the great opportunity. Let me share the short version of a poem that's in my work on indigenuity, learning the lessons of Mother Earth, because I think it answers your question. For me, here's where hope resides. Beauty surrounds us, much ugliness too. This our wise ones tell us. Both are real, but only one is true. And the question is, which will guide you? The ugliness all about you, around you, or the beauty residing within you and surrounding you? Choose beauty, young lady. Choose beauty. Yeah. Sanlai Koyasate, thank you so much, folks. It's been an honor to be here among my heroes.
Good morning, everyone. Isn't it great to be here? I'm delighted we have people participating by Zoom too, because obviously everybody can't get physically somewhere in this very large nation. But the face-to-face interactions are so important, and I'm so glad we can do this too. I am very, very thrilled that not only this year, but last year too, connections I have from the very beginnings of my activism over 40 years ago could be taken advantage of as part of our conventions. Last year, for those of you who were in Las Vegas, we had the wonderful Ian Zabarte with the Western Shoshone, on whose land northwest of Las Vegas is the U.S. National Nuclear Weapons Test Site, where thousands of bombs have been blown up. Horror. And it was so good to hear from him. And this year in Kansas City, there's some other wonderful people who I've known for a long, long time through a wonderful organization called the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability, which initially over 40 years ago was only people who lived right up next to the, at that time, 17 nuclear weapons facilities in the United States, developing these monstrous, murderous, omnicidal weapons. And it is bigger than that now. ANA has affiliate members who work against nuclear weapons, but are not neighbors. And that's fine. We all got to get together and challenge this, or among so many. But it's been just wonderful, coincidentally, that last year and this year both, good Alliance for Nuclear Accountability friends of mine could be some of our speakers. I'm not going to go into detail. You can read it if you want in the program and online. But Anne Sullentrop has been with ANA for many years, as have I. Kimmy Igla is younger and newer. And that's something ANA does a wonderful job of, the intergenerational good work and learning and working together. And ANA, because it's people. See, if you live right next to a plant, you have a legal relationship where you get some more information, not everything, of course, but some more information about what the hell is going on there and what they might be doing to your neighborhood. And so that's the value of being an actual neighbor of one of the nuclear plants. And so that's what ANA originally was and still largely is. So the people in ANA, a lot of them know because of what they're breathing and drinking and what their communities are experiencing with fairly good paying jobs, but what are they carrying home? You know, it goes on and on. So again, I'm just utterly thrilled to be able to introduce Anne Sullentrop, who's a nurse and been working for years against the nuclear weapons facility here in Kansas City, and she'll tell you about it. But I think it's 85%, isn't it, of the components that go into a nuclear weapon, the non-nuclear parts are what are dealt with here. And those things make the damn bomb work. Without them, it wouldn't work. So, and without the uranium and plutonium too, but you know, all the little connections and wires and all that, that's what comes out of here. And Kimmy is younger, but is signed on quite a while ago with KC Peaceworks. It's been challenging this setup and this system and this damage that's happening to the community. So they'll be telling you about the new nuclear weapons arms race, which our government's not telling us about, but they've been doing it for a good while. And what's happening and what we can do to keep challenging it. I want to show you an image before they come up. A lot of you know that I have for a long time been one of the Veterans for Peace people who relate to the United Nations. We do actually have formal standing at the United Nations. And I was there in March and picked up this beautiful, fancy magazine, which has a lot of nuclear weapons information in it. And all of you can't see it. I should have made it a slide so it could be bigger, but it is the nuclear cloud, the mushroom cloud, but it's not the horrible nuclear explosion. It's flowers. And it says, bloom, not doom. And I saw this and I just had to pick it up. And it's got other beautiful images inside it. But that's what we're working for, blooming, not dooming. And please, and we'll have time for Q&A after, because this has been obviously a longstanding horror, but after the Soviet Union fell, a lot of the attention fell off because, oh, gee, we don't have an enemy anymore, so who cares if we have tens of thousands of nuclear weapons? Well, Anne will tell you, Anne and Kimmy will tell you why we care. So whoever's coming up first, Kimmy. Thank you so much.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Well, first off, actually, no, thank you so much, Dr. Wildcat. I just have to say to you, thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom. I'm very appreciative. Welcome to Kansas City. My name is Kimmy. This is my hometown. I'm a leader with the No Nukes KC Coalition, an organizer with the Nationwide Alliance for Nuclear Accountability, and a member of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I grew up with my father's military legacy presented to me like it was something to be proud of, something to glorify from generation to generation like he did and his relatives before him. When a Marine recruiter started sniffing around me, my dad was delighted. He thought it was a sign from God that I bumped into this guy 3 separate times. But it was likely because he lived in my area. That was why I bumped into him so much. And I had a target on my back as a working class teenager with parents that could not afford to send me to college. So I was tempted, but ultimately I ghosted that guy, as we say. Once, yeah. Once I found a life outside of my homeschooled fundamentalist conservative upbringing, I started deconstructing everything I was taught and the mischaracterization of history that I internalized as an indoctrinated child. In that process, I started volunteering and eventually living at Cherith Brook, a shower house and dining hall for our houseless neighbors in KC. We know that poverty is a symptom of war, deeply connected to the anti-war struggle. If the US government did not keep a $1 trillion war budget, we could all have access to housing, water, food, a right to thrive. Glad we're all in agreement on that. Another volunteer showed up one day at Cherith Brook, Jane, shout out, of Legacy Nuclear Justice Organization, PeaceWorks KC. She invited everyone to a protest at the KC National Security Campus. That's Honeywell's nuclear weapons facility, only about 25 minutes away from where I was sitting. And I had no idea that a facility on my hometown's public land was producing 80% of the parts for nuclear weapons. That's how the warmongers like it, though, hidden in plain sight. It's cushioned between the highway with an artificial lake and a walking trail just to paper over the evil that goes on there. Our public municipal land leased to Honeywell, offering jobs and security while enriching themselves off the backs of workers making a fraction of the profits. After protesting Honeywell the first time in 2021, I noticed how many security officers they had to protect this facility against a handful of unarmed peace activists crossing a property line, most of which were pushing 70, praying and singing songs in the tradition of war resistors that came before them. I wanted to know about why those in power were so threatened by people questioning these internationally illegal weapons of mass destruction. But questioning war at all is threatening to those who profit from it so callously. I started digging deeper into the multi-generational fight for nuclear justice by joining the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability. As Ellen mentioned, is a coalition of groups across the country fighting the same nuclear industrial complex that's weapons, energy, and the subsequent waste sites that poison all life on Earth. It's my privilege after 4 years with ANA to learn from experts, leaders, and organizers from across the country. And despite the DOE's misinformation campaigns, this movement has been sustained by Indigenous nations demanding a livable future for all, and legacy activists like Jane and Anne Solentrop, who have always beckoned the next generation like me into this work. Now let's get clear on the multi-pronged attack of nuclear colonialism first, to see how it plays into the larger US imperial project. Some of this information may be familiar to some, but naming names and being specific is important to context and understanding our history. So 1942, the Manhattan Project begins. Anyone remember that revisionist image of Oppenheimer? He's scouting an empty, vast desert to build the Los Alamos laboratory. This erases the reality. The lab was actually built directly adjacent to Pueblo communities, restricting access to ancestral lands. And this pattern started at Hanford, Washington plutonium facility, where the Yakima, Wanapum, Nez Perce, and Umatilla nations were displaced from 670 square miles along the Columbia River. Meanwhile, the U.S. extracted uranium from over 500 mines, mostly on Navajo territory, and indigenous people were coaxed into working these mines to survive, given no protective gear and bringing contamination home. In so-called Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Cherokee families already fractured by the Trail of Tears were forcibly evicted again for a uranium processing facility. Many of these mines I mentioned they remain today unmarked, abandoned, and toxic because there's no profit motive for these contractors to care. July 1945, the Trinity test, the first above-ground detonation. Contamination spread downwind, poisoning generations. 150 million people, mostly Hispanos and indigenous, lived within 150 miles of this detonation. And infant mortality spiked that year. The damage of radiation was abundantly clear. Then the first nuclear bomb was dropped on Japan in August 1945. And we're all told in history class that it ended the war. how simple that would be, but the reality is so much murkier. As Japan and Nazi Germany were imperial nations aligned against Britain, the USSR, and China. Long before Pearl Harbor, US manufacturing and capital armed Japan's military as a counterweight to Soviet communism. America only turned when Japan's expansion threatened US control over Pacific markets, cutting off supplies and provoking the war it then framed as an anti-fascist crusade, erasing its own corporate ties to German and Japanese industry. The bombs were political demonstrations of American supremacy aimed at intimidating the Soviet Union and every anti-colonial movement. Japan, once an imperial partner, was sacrificed as a warning. This is what happens to any nation that challenges US hegemony. The post-war occupation remade Japan into a client state, preserving its emperor while erasing its war crimes, the opposite of how Germany was treated. And that's how the US has always wielded the nuclear bomb, for strategic control. And then just a few years after those bombings, once the dust settled, the scientists keep testing. Over 1,000 bombs were detonated on land stolen from the Shoshone and Paiute people at the Nevada test site from 1951 to 1992, causing generational illnesses and ecological harm. So I like to say this because when people argue, oh, scientists didn't know radiation was bad, they were testing to figure that out. They were just innocent nerds. No, they were not. The people in power had the most knowledge and the most protection. And I've only told you a fraction of the story, but the through line is clear. The state weaponizes stolen land and labor, dispersing harm across communities to scatter us. They've rewritten history with each generation, siphoning resources toward war and manufactured conflict. But the old tricks don't work anymore. In the internet age, we have a responsibility to understand our shared history. We look beyond the misinformation and build coalition from that intersectional foundation. This is essential to dismantling this racist, criminalizing, white-centric system and build a world that we can all actually live in. And now today, the US nuclear posture is aggressive. The National Nuclear Security Administration, NNSA, it receives 60% of the Department of Energy budget in 2026. Energy is just a facade. Modernization is the goal. Nuclear weapons forever, despite international law. The DOE and NNSA are not making these weapons for fun. They intend to use them. If deterrence and security were the goal, a couple thousand bombs would have been beyond enough. New designs, more manufacturing, more waste, none of it would be necessary. The contradictions are more glaring than ever. The US is in the middle of a $1 billion nuclear modernization spree, attempting to replace every single warhead, bomber, submarine, ICBM in the stockpile. And the Kansas City plant is ground zero for that new arms race, or as we like to call it, it's a nuclear arms chase. We call it that because the American military is the biggest threat to the rest of the globe. No one would be racing for a nuclear weapon if the most bloodthirsty organized crime gang didn't have one of the largest stockpiles of bombs pointed at the rest of the globe. In 2024, the Kansas City plant got millions to modernize, and they've hired thousands more workers despite the toxic history the first KC plant left behind. The original Bannister Federal Complex, operational since the 40s and ran by Honeywell since 1999, has been dodging the workers they poisoned ever since. They bulldozed that plant in 2014 and built the new Honeywell facility in a new place. It almost didn't get built, thanks to community resistance making such a ruckus. But in a strange way, I am grateful this plant is here because it was my local window into this corrupt nuclear industry that is shrouded in so much chaos and misinformation. I got to hear workers' stories from the first plant that would have been lost to history. I got to hear from folks who lost loved ones to illnesses contracted at that plant, which sat primarily or in a primarily Black neighborhood. Again, we must acknowledge the intersectionality of this movement in every way, including environmental racism and the working class struggle, as it deepens our understanding and connections to a broader movement. I love it. You guys are all so positive. It is because of these intersections that the modern resistance is growing stronger. I see a lot of kafiyas in this room. The movement for Palestine is a great example that has engaged a new generation against militarism, bringing home that all of our struggles are intertwined. We're building our nuclear justice movement from a more radical, more honest place. We show up for the interconnected struggle of liberation for all, not just a single issue. And I will close with a recent power move we got to make as a community. A public hearing on an environmental law document the NNSA was required to produce because they were sued by our allies for violating the National Environmental Policy Act with a plutonium modernization scheme. It's a scheme that would endanger multiple communities and siphon more and more money towards nuclear weapons forever without properly informing communities. The South Carolina Law Project and other allies stepped in and won us a hearing in Kansas City as one of 5 impacted sites across the country. And we showed up powerfully. We filled every seat with a multi-generational crowd, with folks standing in the back, prepared with ultra-specific comments molded around the political education that we've been sharing. We demanded answers and the transparency that we deserve. And we had the DOE executives questioning their life decisions that led them to that angry room. I will tell you that. People who never would have known how to speak against nuclear weapons were able to confidently take the mic and demand the truth on court record. Folks stuck around for guerrilla poetry in the parking lot after, inspiring a new wave of young people to learn more about the nuclear justice fight in this city and around the world. The people do not want modernized nuclear weapons. We want to live. And we made that loud and clear as a community. And we will continue to send the DOE back to the drawing board until they cease to exist. We are redirecting our righteous rage toward intersectional political education to reach the most impacted people and create a future that leaves militarism and nuclear violence behind and meets people's needs instead. My father was taught to salute the machine, and I am here to dismantle it with all of you by raising our consciousness in our communities to build stronger anti-imperialist movements. The local elders who have expanded their minds to a more intersectional movement are what kept the local nuclear justice fight alive. They listened to the next generation when we demanded more radical honesty and less liberalism that has not been working. That's what kept this movement growing rather than staying a majority white shrinking group. Anne Solentrop is an example of someone who gives the next generation space to lead, as she shared some of her speaking portion with me so that I could be standing here today. And I hope that more of our elders learn from actions like that and truly listen to the next generation. Finally, remember that the bomb is not inevitable and neither is empire. So let's keep building from that truth, because I believe that we will win.
Wasn't that a brilliant analysis? My God. Yes. Thank you, Kimmy. Well, good morning, Veterans for Peace. I'm honored and pleased to be here to speak about the past and the legacy and the roots of our movement here in Kansas City. I brought some images with me, and I just wanted to give you something else to look at besides me. First of all, Kansas City is one of the 8 major sites that makes up, together make up nuclear weapons. And it's kind of been the stepchild, kind of overlooked for a long time. And as a matter of fact, the workers are told not to say anything. They were told when Westinghouse ran it that they should say that we made machine parts, washing machine parts. Yeah. So the map there is the spread of nuclear waste from the bomb tests. So you can see Kansas and Missouri are pretty thoroughly covered. It's really good to be together at this time of chaos, cruelty, and corruption. And I think the answer is caring and community. And it's so good to be together. I would like to give a shout out to, well, this working? Uh-oh. Well, my slides, oh, there we go. Good. This is an example of the major sites in the nuclear complex. And you can see Kansas City is a little dot there. And ANA has a spring meeting where we go and lobby Congress, and we usually produce a booklet. So that was in 2025. And in the fall, we go to one of the sites. There's about 30 grassroots groups around the country that live near nuclear production sites or waste sites. And so when we go there in the fall, we learn about the specific problems in that location. So I've been to just about every place now in the country. And when I first started, I knew nuclear weapons was bad, but I really didn't know the specifics. And a friend of mine, Donna Constantino, she had gotten burnt out. She just like, could you take over for me? And I was like, okay, but you better help me. So, yeah, I joined organizations like ANA. I joined Physicians for Social Responsibility. That's the next slide. Oh, that's ANA's group that was there last year. And it's so great when you get together because, I mean, you can see what's going on Zoom, but to be there and rub elbows with other activists, you get all kinds of creative ideas and you get that zeal, that spark that, you can carry back home to continue the work. And then this is Physicians for Social Responsibility was started in 1961, and I'm now on the national board. And you don't have to be a health professional at all to join it. So they concentrate on, exposing the truth, the real effects that this has on human health. And in 1961, they helped to get Congress to pass the partial test ban treaty to stop above ground tests because they collected baby teeth. And it showed that strontium, radioactive substance, was in babies' teeth. So, can't argue with facts, with data, with science. I mean, they're trying to get rid of science now, but so try to get the next slide. So I did not join the military, although my dad did try to convince me to join as a nurse. I would be automatically an officer. So, but no, I wasn't having that. But I did, when I was 16, I was dating a guy in the Air Force, and he invited me out to his place of work, and I had no clue. I just went out there, little building out in the middle of nowhere, and I grew up near Wichita, so we went down the elevator and came out in this curved hallway. It was weird. And he opened up the door and he said, "Look at this." And I saw this contraption here. I didn't really know what it was. And I was like, am I supposed to be here? I'm like, I don't think so. So anyway, that was my first introduction face to face with a nuclear weapon. And I grew up, in the era of the civil rights struggle and the Vietnam War and so forth. And so I had this mindset already as I was growing up to not really trust what was being said, in the media and stuff. But I think that nuclear weapons are the taproot of violence. Like Martin Luther King taught us the great triplets of racism, extreme materialism, militarism, and add on now the devastation of the earth. All of these things are evident in nuclear weapons. And of course, we all stand on the legacy and the roots of those that came before us. And I remember seeing Helen Caldicott from PSR on TV, and she was like fiery outspoken person against nuclear weapons, and she was said, we should just go to Congress and take all our babies there and take their diapers off and let them run around on the floor. And, what are we doing for our future generations, So, okay. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So you can see Kansas City pictured there. That's a little bit clearer map for you to see all the different sites. And so let's see. And another thing I might mention too is there used to be hundreds of ICBMs all throughout Missouri and Kansas, and there aren't anymore. And I wonder why that is. There's, people that were protesting before my time. There were Quakers, Catholic workers, Peace Works, and there was actually a particularly notable person, Father Carl Kabat, and he rented a jackhammer and he went with 3 other people out to a ICBM site and hammered on it, and he went to prison, I think a total of 27 years. So I've got a slide in here on him too. Next slide. And this is just another fuller picture of the downwinder accumulation of radioactivity that was spread from the Nevada test site. And that's permanent. I mean, that doesn't go away. It's embedded in, we're in the nuclear age, which a lot of people, I think, would rather not think about. Just to, I don't know, just not a non-thought, really. But I'm a pediatric nurse. I had a 45-year career working in hospitals, but I've just learned so much from the organizations that I joined, and I'm very grateful. I just think that that's the way to go, is to join organizations. I mean, you can work on your own, but I think that you're more effective and you learn more from other people. So I've been to all the major nuclear weapons production sites, testing sites, waste sites, disaster sites, and it's just a vast, vast subject. And, I've heard a lot about, even from around the world. I've been to Japan and in a conference where people from all over the world talked about how their health has been damaged from nuclear weapons. And we know that, the half-life of plutonium is 24,100 years. That's 7,000 generations. And the half-life of uranium isotopes is millions of years. So unfortunately, we're facing a new nuclear arms race. They want to make new plutonium pits, and that is the core of a nuclear bomb. They want to make over 200 a year for the next 50 years, they say. But that changes all the time. It goes up, and, they have constantly new things come up. And I've found that Department of Energy is very, they lie a lot, and they hide things, and you just really can't trust them. And they have the mindset that, we're never going to stop. And we're also facing a new nuclear power renaissance. I'm sure you've heard about that. And in the meantime, they're also trying to weaken radiation limits, which is crazy. They're already weak. They already don't protect fetuses and babies and children, pregnant women, and they need to tighten the regulations. They don't need to weaken them, for God's sake. And so a fellow activist told me the other day, she said, I just feel like screaming every day. It's just overwhelming. And there's all kinds of hearings going on, and you can submit comments and this and that and the other. So I'm just going to go and hit the highlights. Well, I should say the lowlights. I'll narrow it down to our plant here in Kansas City. There was, next slide, please. This is just some of the health consequences you can see throughout the body. Next slide. And we have internalized the nuclear bomb. It was mentioned, it does affect our DNA. Next slide. This is the amount of plutonium that it takes to make a nuclear weapon. This is not real plutonium. The person will be dead. Go ahead, next slide. And we're right in the sacred times right now of remembering the bombs that hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Well, it's not going forward, sorry. There we go. That's the bomb that hit Hiroshima. Takes a while, I guess, to get it to go. So here's what that little bit of material did. But there is a place, Air Force Base in Missouri called Whiteman Air Force Base that you might be familiar with. And there used to be a walk from, believe it or not, from Whiteman Air Force Base to the Kansas City plant. And that was done by the Quakers and the Catholic workers. Sorry. But anyway, so I have a picture of a B-2 bomber for you to see. I'm sure you know what it looks like. And also a more recent protest we had at Whiteman Air Force Base. Okay, there you go. So we've had another great person was Georgia Walker, and she's in the next slide. And she crossed the line, and they went to federal court. Okay, so the Bannister Federal Complex, next slide, was started in 1949, and it was only known for the first 40 years or so that there were a few toxicants out there. I think the site when I got involved it said 300 hazardous substances were there. And after we raised hell and got a lot of publicity and whatnot, it actually went up to 2,400 toxicants and included a half dozen radioactive substances, which they always try to greenwash it, saying, oh, we make non-nuclear parts. Yeah, right. And so there was an unknown number of sick people, and hundreds are known to have died. And actually, the Bannister Federal Complex was divided into the old plant that the Kansas City plant, they called it, that made the nuclear weapons parts. And then the other half had the IRS and Department of Agriculture and blah, blah, blah. But there's a HVAC system in common. So the toxicants went over into the other side, and an equal number got sick and died over there. Next, this is Jay Coughlin from Nukewatch, New Mexico, and he was the first to come and tell us from ANA that they were planning on making a new plant in Kansas City. Next slide. So here's a picture of Bannister Federal Complex, and it was on a floodplain, believe it or not, and they had floodgates to keep it in case of a flood. And next slide, please. And this is an underground pool that is permanently into perpetuity full of toxins, and it will have to have wells run down there to pump and treat so that it doesn't go into the nearby rivers, which would end up in the Missouri River eventually. And so the new plant was kind of next slide, please, was kind of these are some of the first protests that we did at the Bannister Federal Complex. Next slide. And we had kind of art. We did all kinds of, we had hip hop poets. We had people make up songs. We went to all the hearings. Next slide, please. We disrupted city council meetings. We read out the names of the people who had died there at the plant. Next slide, please. We just, whatever we could think of, we did. We had uh, a campaign to get it on the ballot, and we collected 5,000 signatures 3 different times, and they kept telling us, well, this is a federal issue, you've worded it wrong, and so we come back, oh no, this is a state issue. No, it's, yeah, all right. We finally got on the ballot, and we got 27% of the vote. But like I say, most people at that time didn't even know the plant existed. So the other side did us a favor, though, because they made up a flyer and sent it out to all the voters, and it brought the fact that there is such a plant, to the public. So next slide, please. And we went to Congress, and that's Emmanuel Cleaver's office, and he used to work at the plant. So, he's in favor of the plant, obviously. Next slide, please. So we put up banner, what do you call them? Billboards, and we made flags out of those images. So we had these around town. Next slide, please. So here's the new site where the plant was eventually built. We started protesting there. Next slide, please. So we got a person on the right there, Lisa Fithian, and she's the organizer, worldwide organizer. She helped us do our first protest where we got arrested. And there's been over 200 arrests now. And they just anymore. I mean, they used to handcuff us, take us to jail, blah, blah, blah. Now they just give us a ticket. They don't even, I mean, they respect us, actually. They look us in our eyes. They talk to us. They give us water. Next slide, please. And we did convince one city council person, Ed Ford, to come to our side, and he participated in one of our press conferences. Next slide. So the new plant, when it went ahead and got built, 2014, and they kind of went around an end round a Congress, because they knew if they went directly to Congress, they never would have got the money for it. So they did a public-private deal, under the table deal, and sort of a branch of the city government owns title to it, the Planned Industrial Expansion Authority, PIEA. So we had a lot of fun at their hearings too. And they actually had the nerve to use urban blight funds on this place. And it's not urban, it's on the very edge, the southern edge of the city. And it wasn't blighted, it was a productive bean field. So it was just ridiculous. And her first action at this site, I'll never forget it. There was about 2-story high earth-moving vehicles, and they were flattening the land. And 100 of us went and surrounded each one of these vehicles and stopped them for a couple hours. That was great. And there was a reporter from the Star there, the Kansas City Star, and he was like, "This is awesome." He put it on the front page. So we got a lot of press at that time. They love a conflict, sells papers. So then it was really great that Channel 41 TV ran a series on the sick workers, and they had time after time, every time they had groups of them on TV during news broadcasts, and they could tell about their health problems and so forth. And we also held numerous town halls for them. So got out to the public. And then, so the plant is currently expanding by 50%. And they're in 2014, there were 2,000 employees. It was kind of a dying thing. And now there's 7,000, and they're hiring. And it's increased from, they used to say they made 100,000 parts per year. Now they say they make 330,000 parts per year. So it's just going the wrong way. Next slide, please. So this is before the plant was built. You could see, you can't really see it like that from the road, so it's better just to show you a painting. Next slide, please. And it's huge. So here's some of the arrest pictures out at the plant. Next slide, please. There's Father Carl Kabat, and he was a character. Next slide, please. So here's another billboard. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And he's deceased also, but he was a great guy. Another one of the billboards. And so it opened in 2014. And then in 2017, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons was voted on at the UN and passed. And so we started publicizing that and getting involved in ICANN. And next slide, please. So we would go out there with these banners. Next slide, please. So 100 countries have signed on to it. 75 have ratified it in their own country. And so here's the new nuclear arms race. Lots of money involved. Next slide, please. So here's the expanding part of the plant on the other side of the street. Next slide, please. So we have been protesting that. Next slide, please. There's Jane on the right. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. So this is Jay Coughlin, myself, and a couple others from A&A at the Department of Energy, the Department of Nuclear Weapons. Next slide, please. There's a recent lobbying effort. Kimmy's there. Next slide, please. So I just want to mention that nuclear power renaissance is related to nuclear weapons in some ways. The military is looking into nuclear power on bases and on ships, and of course, nuclear submarines. There are 40% of our nuclear so-called deterrence, but deterrence really is just a cover up for all-out war fighting capability. So in Kansas, next slide, please. We're fighting an experimental project in Parsons, Kansas, near the Oklahoma border, where a California-based company called Deep Fission wants to run a nuclear reactor down a mile-deep borehole to make electricity. What could possibly go wrong? Next slide, please. So a local pediatric nurse and veteran, Marjorie Reynolds, has started an opposition group called the Prairie Dog Alliance. And she plans to visit this convention on Sunday, so I hope she gets to meet some of you. Next slide, please. So Deep Fission also has a sister company called Deep Isolation. So you may see that in the news also. They want to bury nuclear waste all over the U.S. and the world, by the way, down mile-deep boreholes. And this is also an unproven idea, which raises the prospect of future access to bomb materials by governments and other actors. So next slide, please. There's Marjorie. So if you see her on Sunday morning, say hi. And she's never done anything like this before. And I know exactly how she feels because I went through this too. And you have all this information coming at you. It's like drinking from a fire hose. But she'll say sometimes, "Ann, I'm just crazy. I feel crazy." I'm like, "No, you're not crazy. They're crazy." Go ahead. Next slide. So this is their plan. They want to put the nuclear material down at the bottom, run it for a few years till it's no good, maybe 7 at the most years. Seal that up, put another one on top of it, another one on top of it. It's crazy. And, the drinking water is down about 200 feet, the aquifer. Ruby-Doo aquifer goes all into the Four Corners area, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri. So we're very concerned about this and doing anything we can think of to fight it. So she came up, being in the military, she had worked with hazardous materials, and she had to wear a hazmat suit and get inside an airplane and, work with the tools and whatnot. And she said, it's 140 degrees. How are they going to do this? Crazy. And so this whole entire insane nuclear enterprise must come to a halt. It just flat out has to stop. Next slide, please. So we must start to heal the earth and ourselves. Recently, I visited the Navajo Nation in New Mexico for the Redwater Pond commemoration of July 16, 1979 disaster, the worst nuclear disaster in U.S. history. A mining dam broke, spilling uranium tailings 80 miles down into Arizona and into the nearby Puerto River, and that eventually empties into the Pacific Ocean. Hardly anyone has ever even heard of this because its location on Indian territory. And the speaker at the commemoration, next slide, please, said that the elders have told them to leave uranium in the ground where it is medicine for the earth. But when the uranium is brought up out of the earth, it becomes a monster. Next slide, please. So we got to think of the next generations coming down. And it is estimated that the number of people from across the U.S. who have died from radiation-caused cancers, heart disease, immunocompromising illnesses, and reproductive disorders must surely far outnumber those who died in the atomic bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. We must reverse course from this Pandora's box. Next slide, please. So we must invest instead in research on how to best clean up and contain radioactive waste. Because perhaps the skills of the Kansas City plant's workers could be used to dismantle and monitor nuclear weapons worldwide. We must face the facts that we are living in the nuclear age, which means we have a responsibility to guard these dangerous and deadly toxicants to protect better. At the very least, regulations for exposure to radioactive materials must be tightened to protect, not relaxed. And next slide. I just want to end on a better note. Thank you all. And do any of you have any questions or comments for Kimmy or me? Oh. Just making sure that, go ahead.
And just briefly explain who painted that picture.
Oh, that was my art therapist. I'm a big believer in therapy. And she was selling off her multitudinous artwork, and I picked that one up.
My name is Willard Hunter. I'm representing Chapter 63 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we know a lot about what's been going on. And I want to point out a couple of posters that I made. This one says the DOE and the NNSA want to further contaminate New Mexico with more nuclear waste from the production of new plutonium pits. It hasn't cleaned up its Los Alamos waste from World War II. We say basta in Spanish. That means enough, enough. And my second slide here is on nuclear war, and this is kind of a spoof. It says nuclear war, poof, you're dead if you're lucky. Do you want to comment on that thought?
Yes, you would be immediately incinerated by something hotter than the surface of the sun, the people that were closest, and those further out would suffer from burns. Your eyes might pop out, your skin would hang from you. you would probably be nauseated and probably, from flying debris and whatnot, probably have some broken bones, and there would.
What the folks that were affected by the radiation?
Chaos
in the government and
They were ostracized. Yeah. 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 I mean, just a limited war. 100 nuclear bombs could sink us into nuclear winter, and we would starve, most of us, that if we survived. Yeah. Makes no sense. No sense at all.
I have a question for you from the Zoom chat. One person has asked if you could repeat the name of the contaminated site that you were that you mentioned.
Oh,
They
it's
missed it?
called Redwater Pond Community in the Navajo Nation in New Mexico.
And another question from the chat is, has deep fission gone critical with a prototype?
No, they've dug one 6,000 deep hole, and they just were looking at what kind of rock and things were down there, water and so forth. Then they're getting ready to make their second hole, which is not going to be as deep. They're going to put the canister and the whole apparatus without the nuclear material, and they're going to use electricity to kind of simulate how hot it would be and how they would work with it. But the third one, I guess yesterday DOE gave them the go-ahead to continue on. And like, DOE really has no authority to do that. That's national NRC's job. NRC has always done that, but they're trying to change everything and weaken everything.
Jim Dorncott, San Francisco. My concern about nuclear weapons began when I was on the aircraft carrier just prior to the Tonkin Gulf incident. I watched them loading nuclear weapons on the carrier, on all the planes, including on the catapult, ready to take off. My assignment late after that was to be in the admiral's cabin. I won't go into that story, but if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. That's when I recognized that we were headed towards nuclear annihilation. As Ellsberg says, you don't have to set off a nuclear weapon to use it. I became coordinator of the Nuclear Weapons Freeze Campaign chapter in San Diego as a result. It was, in my opinion, the biggest global movement on the planet to date. California passed an initiative campaign to force Reagan to negotiate with Gorbachev. It passed overwhelmingly, and he ignored it. There's a movie coming out called The Brink of War. I've only seen a tiny clip, but it's an alarming clip because in it, an actor pretending to be in the administration tells an actor pretending to be Reagan, "Congratulations, Mr. Reagan, on getting Gorbachev to the table." Now, those of us who remember those days know that they didn't have an initiative campaign in Russia. Gorbachev was always at the table. And Reagan had to send his people around to calm them down in order to start the negotiation that only began as a result of this big movement that started in the United States. But even the movement in the United States was not powerful enough to get Reagan to the table. It took a global movement. This movie makes it look like the working class did not have any role whatsoever in that. And the working class is what did it around the planet, united globally. And that is the lesson the younger people have to learn as they have to deal with the terrors coming at them, that the world has done it once before and succeeded. Even if it's been rolled back, as you show, we won one, a big one, and they can win one. Thank you for extremely interesting presentation and a call to action. And I want to thank the organizers here for inviting us. We're from the Hands Off Cuba committees. And for us,
Viva Cuba.
this is an important issue as well, because with Trump in the White House, you never know if he gets bogged down in Iran, the nuclear option. If he attacks Cuba, this isn't going to be Venezuela. It will be another Vietnam, because the people of Cuba are organized to fight to defend their country. I'm also a member of the Machinists Union, which has taken a very strong position against nuclear power and weapons. And I think that what we also have to say that there are alternatives. What Cuba is doing now with the solarization of their country is quicker than any place in the world. They've gone from 3.8% solar power in 1 year to 37% solar power. So part of our battle against nuclear weapons, unsafe nuclear power, is showing that there are natural alternatives. So thank you. Thank you for the Vets for Peace statement against the blockade of Cuba. And although I am not a Vietnam veteran, I am from that generation that organized the mass peaceful protests, that organized to defend GIs united against the war, the Fort Jackson 8 and other GIs. We are with you. Thank you.
Several people back here.
Thank you, both Kimmy and Ann, for your wonderful presentations. I saw this week that the Trump administration is, or the Pentagon, I guess, is considering a new nuclear strategy. They're working on one that will allow the president to use tactical nuclear weapons. This is written up by Eldridge Colby, who, if anyone knows him, he's been saying for years that he wants nuclear weapons to be seen as basically one tool in the toolbox, similar to conventional. He said he wants a fluid policy between the two. And he is a extreme anti-China hawk. And I guess what I want to say is it seems like there is a disconnect right now in the public about the, I guess, reality of what could be coming. And I feel like there's this big gap, and it's almost represented by you and Kimmy in a way about like, how do you bridge these generational struggles and get out of that place of apathy and kind of willful ignorance to the threat and get back to something like the Freeze movement, which really knew what the existential question was. And right now it feels like we're drowning in this attention economy and the apathy of not believing that there can be change. And I think part of that is the Hollywoodization of like our history, saying that like things were just kind of handed to us by our leaders rather than forced by a movement in the streets. So if you could speak to maybe like bridging that generational gap and what you see as the most important thing right now to do that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to, give the younger people a voice. I mean, just step aside and empower, and raise money, help them get to bigger forums to spread the word. I think that's very important. Just to continue year after year in the same way, it's not going to work. It's just not. Mhm. More dynamic information, education.
Sorry. My bad. What? Yeah. Sorry. So what I was saying was like more dynamic political education, because a lot of it is a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge from not being born in the era where it was most talked about. So the stories that our elders have here of organizing these like worldwide movements, we need that energy. We also need to understand where young people are at right now in this extremely dynamic, overwhelming world, that like helping us understand and not info dumping or walls of information will help bring people into the anti-war movement, because we are impacted by all of this. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Hernandez, 07 Chapter Los Angeles County. And I live in a fire area and have gone through numerous fires, including the Pacific Palisades recently. But there was the Woolsey fire. And I noticed that Denise Dunfield was up there on the Physicians for Social Responsibility, and one of the largest nuclear spills was near where I live, the Santa Susana Field Lab. And that was back in the 50s. And I'm curious to what your thoughts are on that, because I saw the maps and how California was hardly touched with the, but we are. And it's things like that. So the Woolsey fire came, that lab was at the headwaters of the Los Angeles River, of not just the Los Angeles, it went to Ventura County too. So when that fire went through, all the ash of the spill went into the headwaters, and then the floods came. So all of that, and there was an order for the cleanup to begin. And I think maybe 5%'s been done, and that's been at least a decade of that order. So even when we win, what do we do to keep that going? Because, this is affecting the entire LA County, Ventura County, and I'm sure that's all over with all these different fires coming through with different field labs. Thank you.
Yes, the intersection of climate crisis and nuclear is horrific, and it takes the community organization to bring those things to light. The leaders don't seem to care, don't do much. The people have to speak up and demand. Just like the Redwater Pond community, they've been organizing since 1979, and just now they're going to start doing some kind of a cleanup. I don't think you can ever totally clean it up, of course, but when they originally had the pond with all the mill tailings, it was not lined. It was just in the ground. It just is a community effort.
I hear the necessity to make sure we do intergenerational work, but I also ask culturally. From my neighborhood, basically, let me say from my hood, this is not something that is even a topic that comes up. So how would you bridge, or are there curriculums that are set up to begin to bridge into different cultural spaces where this topic doesn't exist? I grew up during a time of the civil rights, and my father was a civil rights activist, and those were the things that I learned about in there. I knew nothing about nuclear proliferation whatsoever, or how it affected us. When I did hear about it, it was as we were talking about with Reagan and Gorbachev in that particular instance. So how do you take this message, or that I could be able to take this message into the neighborhoods that I'm familiar with, that understand the language in the way that I speak, to show them that this is something that is something that we should get involved in?
Yeah, that's goes back to the concept to have intersectionality and to unite all the different movements together, and to invite everyone in to have a voice. And that's what I always try to do. We used to have an art fair every year, and we tried to make it as completely diverse as possible. And a lot of things are communicated through art and music and film, so forth, a lot better than giving a lecture. So I would say that would be a good way to do it.
Hello? Hi.
Here.
Hello. Hi, my name is Rachel Clark. I'm a lifeline member of Veterans for Peace and also member of Chapter 34, New York City chapter. Also, I'm a member of Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World. This group is in New York City area, and we've been pursuing the abolishing both nuclear weapons and energy. Thank you so much for your amazing presentation. Your materials are super educational, and I'd like to raise 3 points. They're like a kind of question/comment. First of all, Nuclear Ban Treaty, the TPNW, since their second member state conferences, they came up with their own science committee. And they already whining about the lack of funding. So if they don't have any money to pursue their studies, I think it's a good idea for us civil society groups to send our material. And I think your material is perfect to educate them. And since our government doesn't support nuclear abolition, I think we American U.S. civil society group submit lots of scientific data that nuclear weapons cannot be something that we can coexist with, neither nuclear energy. So that's number one. And so if you haven't submit your materials, please do so. And the second, nuclear weapons have been developed together with PFAS, PFAS, as you know. I think many people, if you don't know, please be aware that PFAS has been developing together with nuclear weapons because if you detonate a big bomb, you are creating huge fire and a disaster in the environment. You have to contain the fire as soon as possible, for which the fire extinguishing foam was necessary. Also, in order to separate uranium out of in the core system, that was also in the core system, it is necessary to use a kind of PFAS. Anyway, now PFAS is all over in our environment. And gradually, this anti-PFAS movement is growing in major mainly in Europe, but the US is coming there too. So I think it is a good idea to have a coalition with this anti-PFAS group because we have the same issue. Radiation, PFAS, and Agent Orange destroys our DNA and leave the environmental damage for millions of years. So I think we should expand our coalition. So that's number 2. And the third point, I'm sorry, I forgot. When it comes to name, maybe later. Thank you.
Back.
Thank you, everyone, for having questions, but this will be our last one. Thank you.
Thank you for the honor. My name is Kara Bissell. I'm with John Miles, Chapter 13 in Tucson. I'm also a lifetime member. We are privileged to be an endorser of the MISMOP project, which is the Minab Iran Memorial Monument for Peace project. And it is outside on our table. You can sign up as a chapter. And it's for everything that we're talking about here. We need to have a positive project that isn't something that we're thinking might happen. It's something that we can build on the horror of the first day of this war and stop this war now. And that's what this is all about. Please join us.
In Kansas City, we'll be having a backpack display in memory of the children killed there on August 28th, 6 months after the massacre, with the every child's name and picture. And this is to humanize, statistics. And the first major people that die in wars we know is children.
I just want to say this wonderful woman, I was privileged to see cut through a fence in Germany to protest our our nuclear weapons over there back in 2018. So she's just not always this mild, sweet, she can rock out. But
Yes, I'm a
in
wanted
terms of
woman in Germany.
intersectionality with this subject that we're talking about, Bayard Rustin was fighting against nuclear weapons since the 1940s. He's a great role model to be checking out. And of course, the Beyond Vietnam speech that we all know, Martin Luther King very clearly identified the nuclear weapons. But I want to give a shout out to Veterans for Peace for holding at the UN, and you were also at the UN with CC, watched the US yelling and screaming at the Russian counterpart, calling each other names like teenagers at the UN. But the UN, the VFP sponsored a panel at the UN this May 12th. It was called Genocide, and thank you for bringing up the CAFIA, Genocide/Omnicide. Because what we know, the Veterans for Peace, and we did this panel, is the same companies that are sponsoring all the bombing and the murder and the slaughter over there in Palestine. Same companies are the ones that are making our nuclear weapons. So there's the intersectionality. If you want to bring the youth in to the nuclear weapons movement, there it is. The same companies are that are doing the genocide. So sorry to take more time, but there you go. And thank you, Veterans for Peace,
you,
for
everyone.
sponsoring that panel.
I'm going up there. Thank you. Good morning. I love this. It's wonderful to see everybody here and to have the discussions that we've been having. My name is Susan Schnall, and I think about all those many years ago, and I was part of the anti-war movement, and it was the GI anti-war movement. I really would like to ask those folks who are with us right now, who are part of the GI anti-war movement and who served in Vietnam. Could you stand? Because you're a really important part of this organization and how we got started. So please, you are Veterans for Peace, and we need to honor you all. Thank you. Because you saw what war does, and you saw the terrible destruction, and you know what it is, and came back to this country and have worked for many years for peace and social justice. And we owe just a wonderful tribute to all of you. This morning, and I think you've heard about the project that Veterans for Peace has on Agent Orange dioxin. It's a Vietnam Agent Orange Relief and Responsibility campaign. And it was started by David Klein, who also started Veterans for Peace and was president of the organization for many years. We recognize our responsibility, not for the development, but for the use and for the continuation of that war on the people of Southeast Asia. I mentioned last night that when the bombs stop falling, it's not the end of war, and it's not the end of our responsibility of a country that has used those weapons of destruction. Today, we have a very important speaker, Dr. Sun, who is from the Vietnam Association for the Victims of Agent Orange Dioxin in Vietnam. And he's here to bring a message to us from the Vietnamese people. As somebody who was so active during that time and knew about those terrible chemicals that we were using on the land and people of Vietnam, I usually start talking, when we talk about Agent Orange, to say, I'm sorry that we couldn't have stopped that war sooner. I'm sorry that our government and our name used those weapons to harm the people of Southeast Asia, that it took us years to stop. And today, for all of us to understand
that the House of Representatives has the House, and of course the USAID, who we know did some decent things and some very terrible things, has in fact given money to help clean up some of the areas of Vietnam. There certainly are a lot more. We left our containers of Agent Orange behind. We left people and the land contaminated with Agent Orange dioxin. And today in the House of Representatives, we Veterans for Peace, believe it or not, have legislation that will take care of the people who have been harmed by the United States use of Agent Orange dioxin. And we also have legislation that would take care of the children of the male veterans who served in Vietnam. Neither of those populations have been addressed in this country. So as with the work that we are doing in the nuclear area, in the atomic area, we have a lot of work to continue to do to take care of the people and land in Southeast Asia. And today, Dr. Sun will address us again with greetings from Vava, and his translator is Nyan, who is a very close colleague and comrade of ours on our VORAC, Agent Orange organization. So please welcome Dr. Sun. Yes. And I would like you to meet Thuy, who is joining us from Vietnam, who is one of, we call survivors, victims of Agent Orange dioxin, and understand on a human level, this is what our government has done, what we have allowed it to do, and it needs to stop. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Kính thưa bà Susan Snow, Chủ tịch Veteran for Peace. Kính thưa các quý vị đại biểu, các cựu chiến binh và toàn thể các quý vị.
Dear Honorable Susan Snow, President of Veterans for Peace, honorable delegates and veterans and ladies and gentlemen.
Thay mặt Hội nạn nhân chất độc da cam dioxin Việt Nam, tôi rất vinh dự được tham dự Đại hội toàn quốc của Veteran for Peace.
On behalf of the Vietnam Association for Victims of Agent Orange Dioxin, I am deeply honored to attend the Veteran for Peace National Convention.
Xin chúc đại hội thành công tốt đẹp và chúc Veteran for Peace tiếp tục có những đóng góp cho hòa bình, công lý, tình hữu nghị và hợp tác quốc tế. Chúng tôi cũng chân thành cảm ơn sự đón tiếp trọng thị và tình cảm hữu nghị mà các quý vị đã dành cho đoàn đại biểu Việt Nam chúng tôi.
I wish the convention great success and hope that Veterans for Peace continue to make significant contribution to peace, justice, and friendship, and international cooperation. We sincerely thank you for the warm welcome and the spirit of friendship extended to our Vietnamese delegation.
Kính thưa các quý vị, đối với chúng tôi, cuộc gặp ngày hôm nay không chỉ là một hoạt động đối ngoại mà còn là minh chứng cho sự sức mạnh của lòng nhân ái và hòa giải. Hơn nửa thế kỷ trước, người Việt Nam và người Mỹ đã gặp nhau trên chiến trường. Hôm nay, chúng ta lại gặp nhau trong tình hữu nghị, cùng chia sẻ niềm tin rằng quá khứ đau thương có thể sẽ được hàn gắn bằng trách nhiệm, bằng những hành động thiết thực vì con người.
For us, today's meeting is not merely a foreign relation engagement, but a testament to the power of compassion and reconciliation. More than half a century ago, the people of Vietnam, the combatant of the two people of Vietnam and the US, met on the battlefield. Today, we meet in friendship, sharing belief that painful past can be healed through responsibility and practical and in humanitarian actions.
Kính thưa các quý vị, năm nay đánh dấu 65 năm thảm họa da cam kể từ khi chiến dịch phun rải chất độc bắt đầu tại Việt Nam. Trong giai đoạn 1961 đến 1971, khoảng hơn 80 triệu lít chất diệt cỏ được phun xuống miền Nam Việt Nam. Trong đó có hơn 60% là chất độc da cam chứa dioxin, một trong những chất độc hại nhất mà con người đã từng biết đến.
This year marked the 65th anniversary of the commencement of the chemical spraying campaign in Vietnam. Between 1961 and 1971, approximately 80 million liters of herbicides CIDE herbicides were sprayed on southern Vietnam. More than 60% of that was Agent Orange, which contained dioxin, one of the most toxic substances known to man.
Chiến tranh đã kết thúc hơn nửa thế kỷ, nhưng hậu quả của chất độc da cam vẫn còn hiện hữu đối với hàng triệu gia đình Việt Nam và cả nhiều cựu chiến binh Hoa Kỳ. Nhiều gia đình Việt Nam có 2-3 thế hệ cùng chịu ảnh hưởng. Nhiều bậc cha mẹ, mặc dù đã cao tuổi, nhưng vẫn hàng ngày phải chăm những con khuyết tật. Đối với họ, chiến tranh dường như chưa bao giờ thực sự kết thúc.
Although the war ended half a century ago, the consequences of Agent Orange persist for millions of Vietnamese families and many of U.S. veterans alike. Many Vietnamese families have seen 2 or even 3 or 4 generations affected. Many elders, parents continue to care for their disabled children every day. For them, the war seemed never ended.
Trong đoàn đại biểu Việt Nam hôm nay có cô giáo Phạm Thị Thu Thủy, một nạn nhân chất độc da cam ở thế hệ thứ 2.
Among the Vietnamese delegation today is Miss Phạm Thị Thu Thủy, 29, a second generation victim of Agent Orange.
Chúng ta dành một tràng pháo tay để cho sự hiện diện của cô giáo Thủy ngày hôm nay.
Please give some hands to cheer, to welcome Miss Thủy.
Kính thưa các quý vị, sau khi tốt nghiệp dành ngành giáo dục đặc biệt, cô giáo Thủy đã dành trọn tâm huyết để hỗ trợ các em khuyết tật và trẻ có nhu cầu giáo dục đặc biệt. Điều khiến chúng tôi cảm phục không chỉ là những gì cô đã vượt qua, mà còn là sự lựa chọn của cô biến nỗi đau thành lòng nhân ái, biến khó khăn thành những động lực, cống hiến và mang hy vọng đến cho nhiều người khác. Cô chính là hình ảnh tiêu biểu của một thế hệ nạn nhân chất độc da cam đã lựa chọn tri thức, cống hiến và hòa bình.
After graduating with a degree of special education, she had dedicated herself wholeheartedly to support children with disability and those with special educational needs. What we deeply admire is not only that she has overcome, but also her choice to transform pain into compassion, to turn adversity into the motivation to serve and to bring hope to others. She embodies the generation or Agent Orange victim who have chosen knowledge, dedication, and peace.
Kính thưa các quý vị, kể từ khi thành lập, Hội nạn nhân chất độc da cam Việt Nam luôn hỗ trợ, chăm lo cho các nạn nhân thông qua các chương trình chăm sóc sức khỏe, phục hồi chức năng, hỗ trợ sinh kế, giáo dục và bảo vệ quyền lợi hợp pháp cho họ.
Ladies and gentlemen, since its inception, the Vietnam Association for Victims of Agent Orange Dioxin has consistently strived to care for victims through program focusing on healthcare, rehabilitation, livelihood support, education, and protection of their legitimate rights.
Trên hành trình đó, chúng tôi luôn nhận được sự đồng hành quý báu của các tổ chức quốc tế, các nhà khoa học, các tổ chức nhân đạo và đặc biệt là Vitrang for Peace.
Through this journey, we have received invaluable support from international organizations, scientists, humanitarian groups, and in particular, Veterans for Peace.
Chúng tôi chân thành cảm ơn sự nỗ lực bền bỉ của Vitrang for Peace trong những việc nâng cao nhận thức của công chúng Hoa Kỳ về hậu quả của chất độc da cam, thúc đẩy các hoạt động nhân đạo và vun đắp hòa giải giữa hai nhân dân hai nước. Những việc làm của quý vị đã chứng minh rằng lòng nhân ái luôn mạnh hơn cả hận thù.
We sincerely thank Veterans for Peace for their persistent effort to raise public awareness in the United States about the consequences of Agent Orange, promote humanitarian activities, and foster reconciliation between peoples of our two nations. Your action demonstrates that compassion is always stronger than hatred.
Kính thưa các quý vị, quan hệ Việt Nam-Hoa Kỳ ngày nay đã trở thành đối tác chiến lược. Hợp tác khắc phục hậu quả chiến tranh là một trong những nền tảng quan trọng của mối quan hệ này. Tuy nhiên, vẫn còn rất nhiều việc phải làm.
Ladies and gentlemen, the relationship between Vietnam and the United States has now evolved into comprehensive strategic partnership cooperation in addressing the aftermath of war serve as one of the most important foundations for this relationship. However, much work remains to be done.
Chúng tôi đến đây không để khơi lại những nỗi đau, mà để cùng các quý vị viết tiếp một chương mới của quan hệ Việt Nam-Hoa Kỳ. Trong đó, quá khứ được nhìn nhận với trách nhiệm và tương lai được xây dựng trên nền tảng của lòng nhân ái và sự hợp tác.
We are not here today to reopen old wounds, but to join you in writing a new chapter in Vietnam-US relations, one of which where the past is acknowledged with a sense of responsibility and the future is built upon foundation of compassion and cooperation.
Chúng tôi rất mong muốn Vitrang for Peace sẽ tiếp tục đồng hành cùng Hội nạn nhân chất độc da cam dioxin Việt Nam trong các chương trình hỗ trợ nhân đạo, chăm sóc sức khỏe, giáo dục hòa bình và nâng cao chất lượng cuộc sống cho những nạn nhân, đặc biệt là những trẻ em, thanh thiếu niên. Mỗi học bổng, mỗi chương trình phục hồi chức năng, mỗi ngôi nhà được xây dựng và mỗi hành động chia sẻ của các quý vị là góp phần xoa dịu những nỗi đau mà chiến tranh đã để lại.
We hope that Veterans for Peace will continue to stand alongside with the Vietnam Association for Victims of Agent Orange Reduction in initiative providing humanitarian aid, healthcare, and peace education, as well as effort to improve the quality of life for victims, especially children and young people. Every scholarship, rehabilitation program, newly built home, an act of sharing help to alleviate the suffering left by the wake of the war.
Thay mặt Hội nạn nhân chất độc da cam dioxin Việt Nam và hàng triệu nạn nhân chất độc da cam trên khắp đất nước, tôi xin bày tỏ lòng biết ơn sâu sắc tới Veterans for Peace cùng tất cả những các bạn Hoa Kỳ đã luôn đồng hành cùng chúng tôi trong thời gian qua.
On behalf of the Vietnam Association for Victims of Agent Orange Dioxin and millions of victims across our country, I wish to express my profound gratitude to Veterans for Peace and to all our American friends who have stood along with by our side.
Một lần nữa, chúc đại hội thành công rực rỡ. Chúc Veterans for Peace tiếp tục truyền cảm hứng cho các thế hệ trẻ tương lai bằng những cống hiến cao đẹp cho hòa bình và nhân loại. Chúc các thành viên luôn mạnh khỏe.
We wish the convention great success. May Veterans for Peace continue to inspire future generations through noble dedication to peace and humanity.
Xin trân trọng cảm ơn sự lắng nghe của các quý vị.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cũng nhân dịp này, chúng tôi muốn tặng các quý vị một quyển sách mới nhất để kỷ niệm 65 năm thảm họa da cam ở Việt Nam.
On this occasion, we would like to dedicate this book to you at this convention to remember the disaster of Agent Orange.
Cuốn sách có tên là Sứ mệnh không thể né tránh.
This is the debate that we could not avoid.
Đây là cuốn sách của Thượng tướng Nguyễn Chí Vịnh, nguyên Thứ trưởng Bộ Quốc phòng Việt Nam.
This is from the General Nguyễn Chí Vịnh, the head of the Ministry of Defense of Vietnam.
Cuốn sách nói về suốt một thời gian sau 50 năm thống nhất đất nước và cái sự bền bỉ của cựu chiến binh hai nước, của Bộ Quốc phòng hai nước và chính phủ hai nước để cùng nhau thực hiện một cái khắc phục hậu quả chiến tranh, trong đó có chất độc da cam dioxin.
This book talk about the after the reconciliation of our country and reunification of our country for 50 years, the effort of the combatant and veterans of the two countries to overcome the remnant of the war between the two countries and help to build the two country friendship stronger.
Như các bạn đã biết, hậu quả của chiến tranh đã để lại 3 vấn đề lớn, đó là người mất tích, đó là bom mìn, đó là chất độc da cam.
Like you know, there was 3 issues that remain from the war. Number 1 is the unexploded ordnance, Agent Orange.
Và đó là cái điều mà chúng ta đã khắc phục trong suốt quá trình dài và để quyết định cho bình thường hóa quan hệ ngoại giao giữa hai nước.
And victims of the war, and then that we have achieved a lot, and we have pushed our relation between the country to normalize relation and had of a better relation between the two countries. It started from the veterans.
Thay mặt cho gia đình Thượng tướng Nguyễn Chí Vịnh và Hội nạn nhân chất độc da cam, tôi xin tặng quyển này cho bà Chủ tịch.
On behalf of the family of Nguyễn Chí Vịnh General, we offer this book to Miss Susan Snow, the President.
Và một số quyển còn lại thì sẽ dành
We have the other copies remain over here.
And we have, as is our manner and tradition, a Veterans for Peace shirt. Could I have the microphone? Twee has been practicing her English, and while so I need a microphone. Thank you. Yeah, yes, she will. We'll bring it.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My English is not good. I'm sorry. My name is Thủy. I am 29 years old. I am a teacher education, teach children education mentor. I'm live in To Dụ Hospital and live in Hòa Bình Living. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And are there any questions? Right. But any questions in the audience here? Oh my goodness, we've answered all your questions. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much
ơn
for
quý vị.
this presentation. I know that Chuck Searcy
Tôi
is
biết là
going to
có
be
ông
at our
Chuck Searcy
convention.
He's here.
He's
ở
here.
đây.
I'd just like Chuck Searcy to stand up
Tôi mời
as
ông
one of
Chuck
our
Searcy
allies in this project. Chuck,
và một cái người đồng hành của chúng tôi trong
where is he?
chương trình này.
He's right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. For those of you who may not know, Chuck Searcy is one of the
tôi
prime movers, certainly of Veterans for Peace in Vietnam,
ông
but also in
Chuck Searcy
Project
làm
Renew
với
that
ở
continues
bên Việt Nam.
to dig up the unexploded ordnance that we, the United States, left behind, and many, many other things. And you can read more about Chuck on one of the boards. But truly, thank you, Chuck. I think you were in military intelligence and knows a lot of the damage that has been done and has been living in Vietnam for a number of years and certainly dedicated to taking care of the people and the land.
Hi, I'm Steve Kellogg. I'm with the Kansas City Chapter 97. As a person who was drafted into the Vietnam War when I was supposed to go to graduate school to be in biomedical engineering to help people who had these disabilities.
Kỹ thuật. No, you just go ahead. Để giúp cho
I
những người bên
am humbled to see the effects of what my nation has done and very disappointed, of course. I'm wondering how large the group of people who are affected and that you're servicing through the association that you've developed is.
Another question, statement. Right. This is, okay, let's talk about translation. Nhan is translating into Vietnamese for Dr. Sun. So you've heard the question. It's just taken a little bit of time.
Thank you very much, but I cannot hear clearly. That's why the Nhan will be interpreter for me. Trong tài liệu thì ngày mai thì chúng tôi sẽ nói kỹ hơn trong tất cả những cái số liệu về hậu quả của chiến tranh hóa học, đặc biệt là chất độc da cam tại Việt Nam.
Of Agent Orange, we will talk about it tomorrow when we have a meeting tomorrow. We will present all the document related to Agent Orange in Vietnam. We have all the numbers for you.
Có khoảng hơn 5 triệu người Việt Nam bị phơi nhiễm.
Almost 5 million people affected by Agent Orange.
Và có khoảng hơn 3 triệu người là nạn nhân đã thành bệnh.
3 million people was severely affected by Agent Orange.
Bây giờ thì đã đến thế hệ thứ tư.
We are on the fourth generation.
Answer question.
So what would you say are the best documentation available of the ongoing impacts of the U.S. war in Vietnam, including the Agent Orange and unexploded ordnance?
Cảm ơn câu hỏi của bạn, và tất cả những cái vấn đề liên quan đến chất độc da cam thì đã được đưa lên tòa án Brooklyn năm 2004.
All the documentation has been recorded in the U.S. Federal Court in Brooklyn in 2004 when we went to court and suing them over Agent Orange effect. And then you can look it on the U.S. Congress website. We have some bill up there with all the number recorded in the bill.
Tất cả những cái tài liệu đó đã được thực hiện qua nhiều cái cuộc hội thảo khoa học của các nhà khoa học Mỹ và các luật sư Mỹ.
We have a lot of conferences of lawyers and also scientists, cooperation between the U.S. and Vietnam, one of which is from the Vietnam Agent Orange Relief and Responsibility Science Committee.
Hi, my name is Rachel Clark, Chapter 34, New York City chapter. I am originally from Japan, and in Japan, they do not teach world history starting from 1940 till present. So when I graduated high school there, I have almost no knowledge about recent history. And I redone a whole thing in the US college and also through these Veterans for Peace activities. First of all, as a Japanese origin person, I would like to sincerely apologize for the huge atrocity that Imperial Japanese Army caused to the people of Vietnam. As for, thank you. As for Agent Orange, U.S. chemical companies received exceeding amount of order to produce Agent Orange, so they outsourced to foreign chemical companies. Mitsui Chemical in Japan was one of them. They kept producing ingredients for Agent Orange, and when the US government stopped using Agent Orange in Vietnam, they had so much surplus Agent Orange material in Japan. They spread a little over 90% of Agent Orange material into national forests across Japan. The rest of a few percent, they put them in a metal barrel and buried 54 different sites in national forests. 1980s, there's so many wild monkeys who developed with very similar deformities. Okay, and as you can imagine, there are many handicapped people in Japan who share the same issue with victims of Agent Orange in Vietnam and also second generations of US veterans. I think the government of Japan share the same responsibility together with the US government, and they owe so much apologies and compensations to Vietnam and people of the Vietnam. When I've been organizing peace speaking tour in Japan last 10 years, and we are going there again this year, I would like to make sure that I mention about this very important issue. The word responsibility is very, very important for us, especially among United States people, because we owe so much damage environmentally, causing in 80 countries surrounding 800 US military bases. Thank you.
Cảm ơn bà rất nhiều. Chúng tôi cũng như Nhật Bản cũng đã chịu 2 quả bom hạt nhân ở Hiroshima và Nagasaki. Việt Nam thì cũng như vậy, nhưng mà chúng ta đã có cái sự đồng cảm, chia sẻ. Cũng giống như nạn nhân chất độc da cam Việt Nam, bây giờ hiện nay cũng có rất nhiều bạn Nhật Bản đã đến quan tâm và đến giúp đỡ, cũng như rất nhiều các bạn Hoa Kỳ, các tổ chức, những cá nhân. Ngày hôm nay các bạn vừa nói ông Chuck Jersey, đấy, con người cũng rất là có trách nhiệm và rất là đã cố gắng rất nhiều để giúp đỡ những nạn nhân chất độc da cam Việt Nam. Và chúng ta bây giờ đang làm cái điều như tôi vừa nói, đó là chúng ta gác lại quá khứ, hướng tới tương lai để làm những cái điều gì tốt đẹp hơn để khắc phục, chung tay xoa dịu những cái nỗi đau da cam, nỗi đau của thế kỷ.
Thank you very much for your talk because like the Vietnam, the Japanese people also are victims of the two atom bombs for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The victim there is also the victim like Vietnam, and they have been connected with us every year to talk about. They were compassion to the Vietnamese Agent Orange victim. As I said before, we meet today in order to forget the past and looking for the future to cooperate to bring the resolution to all the problem of the war between the two countries.
If you all would like to have lunch, we're going to need, you want to have one more comment?
I think it's very important. Very important. Excuse me, I'm Margarita from Puerto Rico. It's very important to remember that Agent Orange was tested in Puerto Rico, in the National Forest of El Yunque, in Vieques, and in the southern part of the island where there is a National Guard camp. So we are indirectly responsible for all these crimes.
Thank you. And one of the thoughts that I would like to leave everybody with when we talk about corporate America and the damage that they continue to do today, much of that Agent Orange dioxin was produced by a company called Monsanto. Everybody's heard about Monsanto, right? The chemical companies were sued, and of course, we lost. We lost in a court of appeals, and we lost in a court in Brooklyn. However, also important to remember, you all remember Bayer and what Bayer produced during the Second World War. It was a gas, a chlorine gas that was used in, thank you, in exterminating people during the Second World War. Today, Monsanto's headquarters is with Bayer in Germany. So any of you who use, please do not use Roundup. Roundup contains glyphosate. It is produced, in fact, by Monsanto. So it is, I keep looking at it as a gift that keeps on giving. So we can take a look at this cycle of evil that continues through our government. And you may have noticed that Mr. Bonespurs has declared that glyphosate, in fact, is not cancer producing, even though the international agency has, in fact, identified it as producing cancer. So the better we are informed and the more information and knowledge we have, the more that we can continue our struggle and deal with that. It's more than the triplets of evil, but we all understand and know that we have something to do. And with that, I would just like to say thank you so much for coming this long distance. And join us tomorrow at 4:00. We will have a reception for Baba in one of the rooms at 5. No, it's at 4 because 5 is the buffet dinner. So 4:00, we have some time in between the workshops and the sessions. At 4:00, we will have Baba meeting. Thank you, Dr. Sutton and Twee, meeting in one of the rooms that we have here on the 4th floor. So come join us and ask your questions in. And thank you so much for being here this morning.